Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Rise and Glide podcast brought to you by Paddlogger. My name is Maddie LeBlanc, and I'm joined here today with my co host Holly Pye. And in this week's episode, we are so thrilled to welcome Lindsey Tilton to the podcast. Lindsey is an incredible ultra endurance female paddling athlete. I think actually she's our first ultra female endurance athlete that we've had the pleasure of speaking with on the podcast. And I can definitely say that Holly and I were very impressed with a lot of the accolades that Lindsey has accomplished in our sport. But even more so, the power of Lindsey's mind, I think, was something that really, truly inspired us during this conversation. And it was such a pleasure to talk with her.
Yeah, it was so great to chat with Lindsey. This was actually the first time I've met her virtually and chatted with her, but I found the whole conversation so inspiring. And it almost made me, every time we have these conversations, I say the same thing. I'm like, it almost made me want to try endurance ultras. But I think for now, that kind of distance, like the Alabama 650 miles is just incredible. It's almost unimaginable. We're actually really keen to hear from any of the listeners, whether you would be down for 650 miles or the last paddler standing, because yeah, who knows what will happen in a few months' time. We have some more last paddler standing excitement coming up over the next few months, and who knows whether Lindsey's going to take that title or push even further than she did last time.
Absolutely. That was actually a really fun part of our discussion that we got to have with Lindsey, is that she really spoke about, mind over matter and how the power of your mind really can help you push through those long endurance events. Even though the physical training, it does matter, putting your time in on the water and in the gym during your off season matters. But the really more so interesting part of this conversation, what I found that was so fascinating, was that if you just don't give up mentally, you can push through and make it through anything. And Lindsey's goal this year being to push past that 49th hour, I think, for last paddler standing. I think she has it in her. Like, I really believe she can truly do it because her mind is so strong. What do you think, Holly?
Me too. I think she raised a great point about how, obviously at the moment, the last paddler standing doesn't have like male and female categories. It's kind of everyone lumped together. And I definitely believe that she can do that. She can push past that 49th hour. If you've already done 49 hours, you've got to have a 50th in you, surely. But it is tricky, once it gets to the 49th and 50th hour, there's a speed element that comes into it. You've got to get that, is it 3 miles under an hour? No, it's not 3 miles in an hour, is it? It's 5 miles in an hour.
That's right, because after the 48th hour, the laps become super laps.
Yeah, that's going to be so tricky. Like that's hard enough, especially if there's wind and things to deal with. That's hard enough as it is. That requires some training. But after 48 hours of paddling and no sleep, I can't imagine. It would be incredible. But yeah, she has a great point. Mental resilience doesn't just come naturally to everybody. You have to train the mind like a muscle. It's a skill. And like all the skills, you've got to practice, getting up and going for another training paddle after training the last 13 days in a row. It's not easy, but all of that training, it's not just training for the body, it's training for the mind as well. Doing hard things, doing things that you don't want to do is great practice for when the going gets tough.
Absolutely. And for Lindsey, I feel like it just comes so natural to her in her upbringing, in her story that she shared with us, coming from a running background and then transitioning into paddling. I really hope listeners find her story inspiring and motivating as well, to be able to do exactly like what you said, Holly, just push through hard things, be able to do hard things, because that's what life is all about too. If we go past our comfort zones, there's a lot of beauty in that. And Lindsey's a great example of that.
Absolutely. So without further ado, you've probably listened to Maddie and I chat enough. Let's head over to the episode and get straight into it.
We are so thrilled, and we're so excited to be introducing today our awesome guest, Lindsey Tilton. Lindsey is probably one of the most phenomenal stand-up paddling female athletes that we know. And I don't say that lightly. I say that in the way of just like, I can't even explain how awesome she is. And I'm just so excited to start this chat because Lindsey has so many accolades behind her name, mostly specializing in the ultra endurance space when it comes to stand-up paddleboarding. And it's a space that not really a lot of people are into. So Lindsey is, I think personally, one of the most profound trailblazers that we have in our sport. So Lindsey, welcome to Rise and Glide today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me on, Maddie and Holly. I'm excited to chat with you guys.
Heck yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like there's just so many things I want to talk to you about. Like all of the races you've done, your mental performance, because you talk a lot about that in terms of your training as well. You run a business, you run Aloha Athletics. So I think before we jump into all of that, maybe we could start with actually how you got into stand-up paddleboarding in the first place. Like, where did your paddleboarding journey begin?
So I live in South Florida now, but I've only been living here for the past 3.5 years. I moved here during 2021. So prior to that, I was living in Northern Virginia outside of Washington, D.C., in a suburb. And during COVID, pretty much everything there shut down. The DC was really strict. Like even our parks closed down, like the sidewalks, like for running, everything. And at the time I was running, I was training for a marathon. I've since retired from that activity, but um, it was really hard to do anything outside, even just to stay active during the pandemic in Northern Virginia. But waterways were open, so that's how I got into it. I randomly started doing paddle yoga just as a fun, random activity into yoga at the time, and I was going through a 200-hour yoga teacher certification. And I always loved the water. Fun way to stay active and fit during the pandemic. And then I wound up getting a certification to teach paddle yoga. Once the pandemic was, in a safer spot, we were able to do that. And then I only did that for like about a year before moving down to South Florida. And I first saw, as pretty much as soon as I moved here, I don't know if I saw it on Instagram or like a flyer, but I saw the crossing for cystic fibrosis. And I was like, that sounds really awesome. So, Maddie, I know you're familiar with that. You competed in it last year and actually won for the females. So that's awesome. But it's an 80-mile paddle from the Bahamas back to Florida. So once I moved to Florida, I was like, I want to do this. And at the time, it's funny, I make vision boards every year. I'm pretty big on doing that as an activity just to start the year. And I always have it like hanging up next to me. And that year, I just put a picture of like a group of people paddling on my vision board, not even really thinking anything about it. I was just like, I just moved to South Florida. I don't know anybody here, but I know that I need to like put down roots and make friends because when I lived in DC area, it was really hard to meet people my age. I feel like all my friends were quite a bit older through the running club, which was fine, but I just didn't have same life experiences with them. So I had this picture of a group of people paddling on my vision board without really even thinking about it. I was just like, I just need to make friends, and it'd be like great if like they like the water like I do. And then yeah, I signed up for the crossing for cystic fibrosis, and then that was kind of the rest was history. Like I met all my friends in South Florida training for that. I really had no clue what I was doing. I was training for that event on a boat rec board, so a 10-6, completely flat, 32-inch wide board. Up until May of that year, that's what I had to train and show up to our local race league on, which was very embarrassing, being like at the back trying to keep up with everyone on this rec board, but it actually served as great training. So yeah, that's just how I got into it. Really was through paddle yoga and then just randomly signing up for the CrossFit.
I'm curious because you mentioned about how at the time when you were in North Virginia that you were training for a marathon. So have you always been into long distance activities? Like, is that kind of your jam, or was it just something at the time you were like, I just want to do a marathon, so I'm going to train for it?
So I started running in college more so honestly as a way to try to just stay in shape, like stereotypical college girl who thinks that she's overweight when really she's totally fine. But
that's what that's the, the cardio, go to the gym and just go on the treadmill thing that I was in back then. So I started running then. I was doing mostly half marathons. My college had a race that I did. I did a few others. And then when I moved to Northern Virginia, similarly to how I moved here, and I was like, I gotta make friends. Let me join a social activity. I joined a running club, and it was just like what everyone did within the club was they did the local marathon, which was the Marine Corps in DC. So I signed up to do that. But I've always been more drawn to the long endurance side of running. I just think it's really cool to like I like love watching like the ultra marathons, like the really long distance stuff. And had I not gotten like a injury, I probably would compete in ultra or not compete, but like would do ultra marathons. So I think they're just so cool. The amount of grit that it takes to go through one of those, like 24-hour long 100-mile races. Just so it's very more interesting to me than a short track run. I don't know. My running club, we had track time every Thursday morning, and I would show up to that and I would do my 800-meter repeats. And I'd be like, this is cool and fun to go fast because I'm with friends doing it. But like, it really wasn't my jam. I got more like fulfilled from like a long, really long, uh, training run. And I think part of that, honestly, is just how I, connect with myself and with God and just like how I mentally process being paddles or runs. When I got into running, my stepdad was really sick at the time and was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, um, which has a really low survival rate. So I was, optimistic, but also grounded and aware of what we were facing as a family. So those long training runs really just became a time for me to just disconnect from everything and have conversations with God, to pray. I almost like I joke around. It's like almost like free therapy in a way. I totally support people going and getting actual professional help through therapy, but endurance has always been a sort of therapeutic session for me.
Yeah, that's sorry, that's a really interesting point. Do you find it like, because I find paddling in general just quite a meditative, rhythmic state, it's just you and the water. You can't, it's not like traffic buzzing by like when you're running or, um, and I guess if you're out for hours, either running or paddling, there's no distractions, and you do have those conversations with yourself. What do you find it hard, like, do you, when you've kind of been on those long training runs or your long training paddles, do you find that there's like a mental challenge, or is it pure enjoyment and fulfillment?
It depends on the day, right? So sometimes it's great, and then sometimes you're met with outside influence or even just being in your head. Like in South Florida, we have a ton of boat traffic, which sometimes can just be really irritating. And like if you allow yourself to get into that spiral of like, oh, this is so annoying, I'm getting like pushed to the sandbar, etc., it's easy to get into your head. But I also find it easy to like get out of that and just focus on, my surroundings. Every time I'm out in the water, I just feel so like, this sounds so like corny, but like overflowed with like gratitude for like the earth, the environment, living here, the weather, everything, the water. Like it's all so beautiful to me. I know that sounds like so corny, but it's so easy for me to focus into that. But there's definitely hard days when you're out there and you're just like, this sucks. Like I just did a local race in Florida. It's a 36-mile race. So a little bit longer than Chattajack. And the last few miles were so windy. And I was just like, I just want this to be over. This just like sucks. But then I finished it and I'm like, that was amazing. That was so much fun. Like I loved it. Like I do really love to challenge myself. But yeah, so not every day is, sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes you are in your head and you have to try to like pull yourself
Yeah, that's
out.
really interesting that you mentioned that, because I think, was it season 2? We spoke to Blake Carmichael, and he also said that his like key to keeping going in those ultra long distances is just to list off gratitudes. It's just to think about, his surroundings and what he's grateful for, and that he's grateful to be here, and to be able to do this really hard thing and this really long thing. So it's interesting that you mentioned kind of exactly the same thing. That's maybe that's the key.
I think having a gratitude practice for like not just for sports or for endurance, it just really helps like your mindset because you know, I think like it is an opportunity to be living through the challenges that we have and the experiences because I compare, like, let's say for me, right, like I work a desk job and I'm always like, I did like, I don't want to work today or I don't feel like doing this. But then I think back, like, what about the time when I was like praying for this opportunity and the people that don't have a job or were getting laid off? So, like, if you can focus on something positive, it's so much easier to flip your experience. And if you focus on the negative, because we're always experiencing both positive and negative in our life, right? Like, Maddie, you had lost the power yesterday and you could have been like, oh, this sucks. But I'm sure you focus like, hey, I'm living in Spain right now. This is an awesome opportunity. So same thing with like sitting in traffic, right? Like you can choose. Cause when I was in DC area, it was a long drive into the office every day with like, it would almost be faster for me to ride my bike, but there wasn't a safe way to do that than to drive the 13 miles to the office because it took so long. So I could just get into the headspace of like, oh, this sucks, like start your day like that. But instead of just what can you focus on that you're grateful for in that moment? Because there's even like in the shitty times, there's always a positive to it that you can focus on. Like I mentioned with my stepdad having cancer, like that, I feel like was really kind of like the catalyst for that type of mindset for me because you know, negativity in a way is its own form of cancer, I think, and it spreads and it's contagious. And the more negative you are, the more you're going to be stuck in that mindset.
Mm. I'm I'm so curious to know, Lindsey, like in terms of developing the mental strength and capacity that you do have. And I think honestly that's why like I admire you so much as a paddler and as an athlete and as a human because you do have that mindset of not just like okay, I want this to be over. You have a mindset of like, okay, I get to do this. Like I get to do this and I get to have so much fun doing what I'm doing. Um, but how did that mentality come to you? Did it come to you the more you paddled, or did you develop that, would you say, from like a young age, like running or being competitive? Or like how did that mentality like form for you?
Yeah, I don't really know on like how I got that mindset. I know mindset can definitely be trained and taught and, you know, work mental skills is like a muscle really in a way. And it's something that you can train and develop. I have a hard time pinpointing like when it was maybe when I started long distance running. But it's always kind of come natural to me. I think during the yoga teacher certification that I did, it was a lot of sort of mental, you know, just like self-awareness type of work rather than physical asana, like the poses. Like I would say the majority of the 200 hours was really just digging deep inside of yourself rather than, and like the history and whatnot, which has a lot of philosophy, again, which ties to mindset. So I would say maybe that helped too. Yeah, I don't have like an exact time of like when that started to develop. I definitely got like more and more into it the more I've done ultra because you have to. Like you have to be able to train your brain. It's impossible to train physically for those type of races. So you really are relying on your mental skill set.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
interesting you say that you would say it's impossible to train physically for those type of races, and I totally understand that. And you know, I guess if you're doing well, there's a time limit. You can't go out every day and paddle or run for hours and hours because you have other stuff to do. And even if you could, maybe you know people get injured doing that kind of thing. Um, how how is your kind of preparation for those kind of events? How much time do you try and spend paddling versus running versus, you know, mentally preparing, and what does your kind of prep look like?
Yeah, so I can speak to the 650 because that was like the longest or the most training. What I did for that is I just stacked paddles as much as possible. So I would go for maybe an evening paddle and then followed up by a morning paddle, followed up by an evening paddle. And for that race, I did like, I think it was like 21 days consecutively of paddling every single day without taking a day off the water just to kind of train that fatigue that you'll be feeling during that race. Cause that race, you have 10 days to do it. And you're really just pretty much paddling for the 10 days. You don't have breaks. think my longest for that was probably like 30 miles, but it was like followed up by the next morning by a 20-mile paddle. Right now, I'm training for the Swanee 230, which is coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks. So it's a 230-mile river race. So it's a little bit different than the 650 because hopefully the water will actually be moving since it's on the Swanee River. Whereas the water in the 650 is really stagnant. At least it was for us last year. We had a low water year. Um, but my husband has actually been calling me out. He's like, you haven't been training as much recently. Like, you need to start getting ready for this race. And that, like he doesn't understand, but there is like only so much you can do on the water. But you like cross this, you teeter along this line of, overtraining and potentially getting injured or being so sore that you're compromising your training or your performance. So I think I approach it a little bit differently for every type of race. How I train for last paddler is different than how I'll train for the Swanee. But right now I'm just trying to stay active on and off the water, paddling mostly like probably less than 10 miles during the week, and then a longer paddle on the weekends, probably max 20. And then just staying active with the gym. And I really like to bike. My husband and I bike together, so that's great. Zone 2 cardio. I think for endurance, honestly, the more endurance, like zone 2 stuff you can do, the better it is. But there's other things you can do that I think help for training as well. Like I have a standing desk at work with a walking pad. Just standing on my legs, I consider training. So like even though you're not, in the gym or on the water, just standing up straight for, 8 hours and then having the treadmill going, even though it's going so slow, like my heart rate's not really up, it is training and building your legs. So I try to do anything like that that will add up to cumulatively help train, because I do think it's really challenging to physically go and be like, okay, I had this 230-mile race, so I'm going to go and paddle 100 miles in preparation. Some people will do that. Cost benefit analysis for me, it's not super worth it to overly fatigue yourself leading up to an event while through training, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
just physically, it's hard to fit in the calendar. Like, I don't know how long 100 miles will take me a long time. And when you have work and, other stuff to do, it's just not, it's hard to squeeze in, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's our like the training while you're not training, like standing at the desk. It doesn't feel like training, and a lot of people don't even think of it as training. Standing desks are very common, but what do you do on a stand-up paddleboard? You're standing, right? You're on your legs, and in these ultra races, you're standing for usually multiple days on end. So for the Swanee 230, it'll probably take me a little over 2 days. So that means I'm going to be standing upright for 2 days. So yeah, anything you can do like that. Like I tell people to like, when you're brushing your teeth, stand on one leg or go on a Bosu ball, like anywhere you can like kind of like habit stack to help, because like you said, time is a limited resource. I work a full-time job. I run a small business, and, I'm a wife and all these other things, a friend, and these things I try to be, these roles all take time and responsibility. So it's hard to get out into the water. I do feel fortunate that right now I have the time to do that. Like I don't have kids or something preventing me from doing that. But I do honestly feel guilty when I leave my husband and I'm like, all right, going for, an 8-hour paddle. See ya. Take care of everything at the house. Take care of our dog.
Yeah, it's so true. I remember like last year training for the crossing. I only had like 2 sessions that were 8-hour paddles. And I remember both of those days, I was like, wow, that was my whole day. Like when you're just like that, it's gone.
Yeah, I could have done so many things.
But you say, thanks, Fam Jam. Thanks for
Yeah.
taking care of everything. Thanks for holding down the fort. It's yeah, it's real for sure. But I think that's actually really cool that you talk about it like that, because it's almost like if you guys have ever heard of like the 1% rule, like the 1% of like trying to get better every day. And those things that you're mentioning, I think are so cool for our listeners to hear, because it's little things that we all can do. Um, Kind of almost very similar to Milky's conversation, Holly, that we had not too long ago,
Yeah,
just about your circumstances
balance.
and trying to make things work. Yeah, and living life in a balance, making
Mhm.
sure that it's all evening out. So
Yeah, I think everybody has, even the best in the world, even the fully professional paddlers, everyone still has other stuff going on in their life, like whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's various responsibilities. Like nobody has life super easy. And I think just doing what you can when you can is like that's all you can do, and sometimes the things that prevent us from paddling all the time probably do us a favor. Like I also know people who have been able to spend a lot of their time on the water, and like in other water sports, and that goes on for so many years, and then after a little while they just get injured because they've spent too much time like training or whatever it may be. And so yeah, I think doing what you can when you can is kind of a really good approach. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
I'm still finding this whole conversation really cool because you've just done so many amazing things. I'm really interested to know, like, so far, which has been your favorite event? I know you've done like so many
I was gonna
long.
ask that too. Oh, that's a
Great
great
minds,
question.
Maddie. But you've done so many cool things, and they all vary. The 650 must be so different to like Last Paddler Standing, for example. And all the different events. Like, do you have a favorite?
It's a question because they're all so different and cool in their own way. Like, I love Lost Toddler Standing so much because the community aspect of it. Maddie, I'm sure you saw that when you were commentating last year, is that even though you're competing against these people, right? Like, you want people to drop. Like every hour, you're like, I'm getting the update, who's missing, like counting heads, right? You want people to drop, but in a way you also don't because you're hanging out with them, you're having conversations. And the nature of that event of just going in a circle, you're pretty much forced to paddle with someone. Like I've had a few laps over the 2 years that were alone for sure. And you can also choose to do that. Like you can either get really far ahead or choose to be slower. But if you're just like kind of, keeping it in that zone 2, middle of the pack, you're gonna be paddling next to people. Which has been so great to meet so many awesome people from honestly all over the world. People fly in from outside the US for that race. So I love that event because of the community aspect. I met so many really awesome and inspiring athletes and friends from that event. But I also really enjoyed the 650 because that race pushed me in a way that no other race has. I feel like I saw almost my breaking point during that event. It's the first time I cried during a race was during 650, and I cried twice during that event. So I love them, all of them for different reasons. The crossing for CF is beautiful scenery. And for me, that was the first real endurance challenge I did and kind of helped me show myself what's possible. Because I feel like we all have these like self-imposed limiting beliefs, right? Especially when you sign up for something crazy, you're actually going to get likely a lot of external limiting beliefs imposed upon you. People, my mom, that's crazy. You're going to get eaten by a shark. All of those things. Like, I don't know about when you sign up if people ask you about sharks 100 times, but I feel like everyone's always like worried about sharks. Actually, pretty much like anytime I put a picture of ocean paddling, I get someone will respond and be like, "Aren't you worried about sharks?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not." But now that's in my head because you told me.
You're like, thanks a lot.
Yeah. So the crossing for CF, I really enjoyed because it, showed myself really like what's possible. Because I went into that the first year without really having been prepared, trained. I had a surf injury on a surf trip in May. So had pretty severely injured my ankle, and that's part of the reason why I can't run anymore. Is just like I needed to get reconstruction surgery, and I'm putting it off for much later in life. So I'm like, I'm too young to get surgery. So yeah, I only paddled 12.5 miles training for that race, and then I went to 82 miles. So I feel like that really showed me the limit doesn't exist. Our only limits are self-imposed limits. Like I really believe, and it's like kind of a delusional thought that everyone is capable of anything they want. And that's something my parents have always told me as a kid. Like anything you put your mind to, you can achieve as long as you put your mind to it. So that's the key factor is like putting your mind to it. And so that's why I love that race. But like, yeah, every race has its own thing that I loved about it that I've done. But I would say like overall, just the community aspect of Last Paddler Standing is so awesome. And honestly hard to replicate in another event. Like during the 650, you're not in that same, there's only 20 paddlers every year. So it's kind of impossible to have the same community feel. So I think the community aspect is pretty unique for Last Paddler.
That's so cool. And you're doing it again this year, correct? You're gonna compete in Last Paddler?
Yeah, I think unfortunately I have the sickness that I won't be able to stay away from the event until I achieve my goal for the event, which I at least want to do one super lap. I don't want to limit myself by saying my goal this year is to just do 49, but I think until I do that, I'm going to have this like this age, just like I'm not satisfied. I know that it's possible and I want it to be done because it hasn't been done yet by a female. And, you know, there is the question we saw last year at the event of like, is the super lap a little bit too long, being that it didn't get finished last year, the race won last year. So I think it can be done by a female, and I would like to be the one to do it. Although if there's another girl that comes into the scene, I would love to cheer for them on as well. But I just feel like until it's done by a female, I'm going to keep showing up. Unfortunately for me and for my husband. So if there's a girl listening that wants to do it, I just want someone to prove that it can be done by a female. It doesn't have to be me, but so far there's been no one to try besides me. Yeah. So step up because I need a break.
I'm actually, that's triggered my memory. So we spoke to Greg. I don't know if you listened to our episode with Greg, but we spoke a lot about women in the last paddler standing, and I'm really interested to know what your take is on whether there should be a female category, because we spoke in depth about about that.
I feel like this is a very spicy question. It depends. Honestly, I go back and forth on it because if there was a female category the first year I went 48 hours. But if there was a female category, I probably would have stopped closer in below 30. I forget what it was, around 20, I think was the second female. So I wouldn't have really pushed myself to keep going, I don't think, because I would have been like, well, I won for the girls. So like, I'm going to, go and crew Blake or someone else here right now. So in a way, it's great to be able to compete against the guys. We don't typically have that in paddle racing. You're very much confined to your division. So it's a unique experience, but I also do recognize the biological differences that female have. That, it can be an advantage. Like, I think women are more mentally tough than guys. No offense to the guys listening, but there's a reason why we birth babies and not men, right? And I think that's our mental toughness. Like, naturally, we're more mentally tough than men. So I think there's an advantage, but there's also a disadvantage. If you compare the times of men paddling on average, they're going to be faster than girls. If you compare the lifts of men on average, they're going to be higher than girls, right? There is physiological differences in our anatomy, not to mention, like during Last Paddler last year, there was like guys going to the bathroom off their boards where I'm like, okay, I don't have that luxury. I either need to get into this nasty water or pee my pants or use my few minutes on land to run to the bathroom and do that. So like there's advantages and disadvantages to both sides. I think if the event grew and it was bigger, and like there is somewhat a size cap to that kind of event, you can't have too many people. It would just be really chaotic. And you might lose that community aspect that the race has if it grew to like several hundred paddlers. But if there ever was an event that it was larger and more girls showing up and then more men showing up, I think in that case, it would be cool to have a female category. This is just a really tough question because having the guys there in your category is going to push females to go further because they're competing against the guys, right? You get placed, like there's not really placement for Last Paddler, but like where you fall on the list, it's not, there's a male and there's a female list. So I don't know, like I would love to see female anatomy recognized as being different than men. But at the same time, I like being able to be pushed by men. I am curious how long the race will go on without a female Last Paddler though. I mean, maybe this year I'll win. I don't know, but I think it's going to be several years coming that we see a male at the finish line. And I actually just watched, I recommend it for you guys. It's really good. A documentary on the Barkley Marathon, where they had the first female finisher ever since the race. It's called The Finisher. It's on YouTube. It's like 45 minutes. So it took like, I think like over 30 years of that event going every year. So that's a 100-mile trail run, if you're not familiar with it. And they just had the first female finisher ever. She didn't win, but she finished, and that was like an accomplishment. Same thing with doing the stand up for the 650. Like I didn't win, but I finished, and that was an accomplishment. So I'm curious how long it will take to see a woman win that race. Like I said, this year I'm really hoping that I can train myself to at least get to the super lap, because right now I think there's, the thought that it hasn't been done by a female. Is it possible? I think maybe if you get someone who crosses over from, who's like a really fast paddler in shorter distance races, if they can train themselves physically and mentally to do an ultra, I think it is possible. But until it's done, it's just like this, is it possible? Is it not possible? I don't know. I think last paddler standing would be, in my opinion, a little bit more gender fair if there wasn't the super lap, if it just kept going 3.3 miles, because then it somewhat takes the speed and strength aspect out of it. Whereas right now, Greg will say that it's a level playing field, and it's the most level that it can be in his point of view and in others' point of view. But I do think that extra speed going to 4.8 miles, 4.8 miles, you guys know you race, isn't incredibly fast, but doing it after 2 nights of not sleeping and paddling 160 miles, like, it feels fast at that time, like your body's already had 160 miles.
Yeah. Especially
This
if it's
isn't really
windy.
that was a problem last year. The race had was that it was windy. So this is a really long drawn out answer to say, like, I don't know. I go back and forth all the time on what's fair, what's not fair. I do think, as a female athlete, I'm always going to advocate for women in the sport. That is something I'm so passionate about. And I would be doing a disservice to women if I didn't recognize the differences between men and women in sports, right? But at the same time, like, oh, well, I would have only maybe went 20 hours if I didn't have that. So I don't know.
I think
It's really tough.
I think it will make it even cooler when, whether it's you or somebody else, but when another female does win, if there's no gender category and somebody that's female wins the race, I think that will mean so much more than if there's like a male category and a female category, but a female wins overall. Because I think in that situation, so many people just, because there's still separate male and female categories, people don't realize that like maybe a female won overall. There's like a few books I've read in the past where there's been like in other sports separate male and female categories, but the like winning female beat all of the men, all the males, and people just didn't quite realize, I think, because they just assumed. So like the men's category, this was like going back years ago, the men's category had prize money and the women's category didn't have prize money. That's a whole nother conversation. But the top female won overall. So they were saying like they should have given her the prize money, but they didn't. They still just gave it to the men.
They should have
And
given her the prize.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. So I think having one big category. I mean, I can't really talk because I've never done it and I probably never will do it. But having, well, I'm going to put my opinion forward anyway. Having one big category, I think, is going to make it so much cooler when you just smash everyone out the park. Greg definitely believes in you. We definitely believe in you, and yeah, really excited to see what happens this year. But no, I do agree with you as well. I think having to do what did you say it was, 4.9 miles or
I think it's like
4.8?
4.8. Yeah.
Yeah, or like in Europe, roughly 8 kilometers in an hour is fast enough. Like it's definitely fast enough, especially when you're so fatigued and there's other weather conditions. And yeah, I do agree with you on that.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one.
It is a tricky one, that's for sure. But, besides Last Paddler Standing and the Swanee, am I saying that right?
Mhm.
230? It's
Mhm.
230? Yeah.
Mhm.
What other races do you have planned this year? What else are you hoping to compete in?
Swanee and Last Paddler are my main races for this year. I am hoping to wake up later this week at midnight to get on the Chattajack roster. That'll be my third year doing that race. I love that race. It's just such an amazing experience with how many paddlers come out to it. So I feel like I'll race that every year as long as I can get my name onto the registration list since it fills up so fast. And I'm also doing the crossing for cystic fibrosis again this year. I really didn't want to race that race this year or compete or participate rather, I should say. I really wanted to crew for somebody. This itch to crew for somebody for some long distance event really badly. I think I would be a really good crew with like understanding athletes' needs, but also being a cheerleader and, mental coach to them from the sidelines on the boat. And I feel like I can push people really far. I think that's one of my strengths with, helping train other people is helping them discover their strengths. So I was all in on crewing for somebody this year, but my friend Riley Walker asked me to join her in the water to help push her to be the first female with cystic fibrosis to go all 80 miles. So I am doing that and I'm excited for that. It's going to be totally different because you're going to make the first time that I'm participating in a race and it's not at all for me. The crossing for cystic fibrosis, it's always for a larger purpose as raising funds and awareness for CF. But at the same time, it's like you're competing, or maybe you're just doing it for completion, but it's like for you in some capacity. But this year, showing up for the crossing, it's 100% for Riley, is why I'm doing it. So I think that'll be just a really cool experience. But yeah, those are my main ones. So I have the Swanee in a few weeks, and then in May, doing the crossing for CF, and then Chattajack, and then Last Paddler. That's about it for the race calendar this year.
Love how you say that's about it, but I think people listen. These are long distance races. We're not joking. And again, these are miles. These are not kilometers. Like, I don't even know. Like, what's 230 miles, Holly? What, maybe close to
Oh,
500?
yeah, like 400 maybe
Yeah,
kilometers. There's 1.6 kilometers in a mile.
That's right.
So what's 230 times 1.6?
Let us
Probably
know,
quite a
audience.
lot.
Tell us in the comments.
A lot is the answer.
I'd like to do some shorter races mixed in because, training for Last Paddler this year for the 49th lap, I think gaining speed is going to be really imperative for me to be able to complete that. So I have to find some shorter races, but I won't be like traveling for them. They'll probably be around here. Although I have been eyeing the Bay Bridge paddle in Annapolis because it's up near actually where I started paddling. It's the first time I did stand up was outside of Annapolis. So I think it'd be like kind of full circle, but traveling is challenging with a stand up paddleboard. So I don't know. We have a weekly race league here where I live in Jupiter, Florida. And although it's not really timed or official, that somewhat helps satisfy my itch for like a shorter race. So there's several different lanes, but I usually do the 5 or the 6 mile course, which is pretty close to what that super lap is. So every week I show up on Tuesday nights and I do that. I'm trying to like get my time lower and lower to train for the super lap.
Yeah, that's actually a really good approach, I think, because it's cool to look at your past experience in that race and know, like, you can literally tell yourself, okay, I know how to make it to 48, like lap 48. I've done it before. I can do it again. And yeah, if you can just pick up your speed for the super laps, then I think you'd be really successful for sure. So that's a great way to go about it.
It's that easy. Just pick up your speed, Lindsay.
Yeah,
Just
just do it.
faster. Just paddle faster.
Well, speaking of that
Listen to
awesome
us.
advice, right? But how to get faster? I mean, hey, you know what? I think I say that with confidence because Lindsay, for those of you who don't know, Lindsey and her really good friend Casey as well. You guys run a small business together called Aloha Athletics, where you do help train paddlers to get faster. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, how that started and how that's going for you guys.
Yeah, so we founded Aloha Athletics in the end of 2023. And really, our mission with that is to empower paddle athletes. We focus on women, but also men. And it really came about after competing in Last Paddler Standing. I noticed a gap in the marketplace for paddling for people focusing on ultra endurance. There's not a ton out there. Like if you Google what do you eat during ultra, like you're not going to find a ton of stuff out there. So it started as an idea of just, empowering people by providing those resources. I wrote a handful of blog posts. We post training tips on our Instagram, things like that. But it's evolved to really just be a community of paddlers empowering each other, which is amazing. This year we launched a challenge. We have about a little over 50 participants in it. And we have a really special online community for them. And so the challenge is called the Endless Aloha Challenge, and it's basically an annual mileage challenge. So it started out with last year, I wanted to paddle the year in miles, so 2024 miles during the year. I just thought that would be, a random but cool feat. So the challenge started out as paddling the year in miles, but not everyone is going to do that, right? And that's okay. It's not about a number, it's about pushing yourself. So there was different milestones. So some people are choosing 500. It's like 500,000, 1,500, and then 2025, and then also 2025 in kilometers. So it's a little bit less. So everyone has a self-defined goal at the start of the year, and we have a online tracking system that people are logging their miles. We have monthly challenges to help them meet that. So it's just been really great to see that community evolve. Walked away from it and wasn't posting or reaching out to people, it would continue on because of the culture that we've created in there, which is really supporting and empowering each other on and off the water, being cheerleaders for each other and just being a champion and a resource, a sounding board, someone to celebrate your success, no matter how big or how small. So I think it's really amazing to see that shift this year. And it just really helped me kind of get a little bit of clarity on the direction that I want to take Aloha Athletics. Is I really just want to help empower athletes, both paddling, running, biking, whatever it is. I think my strong suit is my mental skills that I have, and breathwork coaching, certified in breathwork, yoga, all those things can support any athlete, especially endurance athletes where it is so mental. So I think I'm going to need to start to try to take that into more of that direction. But we'll still continue to offer paddle training plans and things like that. But I would just really focus on, community and empowerment right now. So our challenge is a community thing. I would like to host a community weekend retreat to get people together. And in the future, I would like to shape this where it's not just paddling based, but maybe we set out for a really cool hike, like a really challenging hike. Let's say, I don't know, I did the Colorado Trail in Kauai. This wouldn't be it because it's impossible to get permits, and you can only take so many people through that trail every day, for land protection purposes. But we all together choose a hard challenge and then as a group go on to this trip and do it together, because all of those mindsets and empowerment, breathwork, all of that translates to every part of our life, not just how we perform on the water. So I'm trying to, navigate that now, how it's going to look. We are only about a year and a half into business, and so far we've focused pretty much 100% on paddling, as well weaving in that mindset and performance coaching. But I'm looking on avenues to expand that one, so it's a sustainable business, because this is a passion project for me, and I need to continue to evolve it as I grow as a person and as an athlete, as a paddler. So it's evolving with me as well as Casey. So I think that's where we're at right now. I think it'll always be paddling based, because that's how we were founded on our core, and paddling is my endurance sport of choice. But I'm just trying to think of ways now that we can apply the concepts from paddling to all aspects of life.
It's phenomenal. I think that's actually really cool. And I think You know, for paddling, I mean, most of the time we hear about people who don't have opportunities to train with other people. They might be going out by themselves most of the time. Or like, you know, if you're like me and you live in a cold environment, sometimes you have a whole season where you're off the water, right? So it sounds like Aloha Athletics provides that community aspect that maybe a lot of people are missing or really just want to have as well when there's moments too when they can't get on the water. So that actually sounds like really cool. All of the offerings that you do have at the moment, where you want to take the business in the future, and knowing that because it's your own thing, it's probably, you know, you're in Casey's like baby. You guys can make it and shape it however you want to be for the future.
Yeah, exactly. The community aspect, just to touch on it again, is so important because although Casey and I are leading Aloha Athletics and are the coaches, right? The providing the programming and such, we learn so much from each other and from our community. So one thing we have in the Endless Aloha Challenge is that we ask everyone every week, like, what was your win this week? What did you learn? If you raced this week, what did you learn? It's always like, what did you learn? And share it with the community. And I think it would be really silly to just pretend that we're the only authorities in this space behind our business and not learn from each other. That would be limiting our community and also ourselves. I think we're both qualified and know a lot and actually get really into the nerdy science behind performance. I actually really love that. And I'm actually pursuing going back to school for that right now. But we learn so much from everyone else, right? There's a lesson in everything, and opening up that community as a culture of growth together, which is really what it is. It's like we're all growing and evolving together, and how can we learn from each other? Which the community space has been so important to us, and really the core of what we founded Aloha Athletics was. Just like to provide a little bit of background behind it is during last toddler standing my first year, I got pretty severely cyber harassed by an individual during the event. Um, and I have really thick skin. I grew up with two brothers. You can pretty much say anything to me, and I'm not going to take it personally. To me, it's more of a reflection of you, Maddie. If you like said something to me, I'd be like, okay, like I'm a mirror, right? Like you may be projecting something onto me, but it's what you're dealing with at the end of the day. But I know not everybody has that mindset. And I just read the message that I received. I was like, I never want another athlete to experience this, or another human, another person in any capacity take, harassment and bullying is really near and dear to me. My husband was bullied in like middle school and elementary, and that showed up for him later in life. So it's just, I've always been very sensitive to that. And I always want to be a cheerleader for everyone and make everyone feel supported. So that was kind of how it came about, was like, we need a community of people that are going to stand behind each other no matter what. I've seen in other paddle communities, people be left behind or like dropped on a community paddle or things like that. And to me, that's just really disheartening to see. And I, never want someone to experience that. So while there's so many communities out there that people can choose to be a part of, and you can be a part of multiple, right? There's no exclusivity with ours. It's just, we're really focused on empowering people and making them feel really supported and seen no matter what their skill level is. It's really important to me. Um, just so that if anyone is ever in that situation of, bullying or harassment or whatever it is, that they know that they have a whole community behind them. There might be one person in your ear, but you have a whole people that are going to champion and stand up behind you.
Is amazing. And I think that's so cool. Like, I mean, gosh, guys, we're so lucky that we live in this day and age of being so interconnected with technology and having these platforms. Like, I can think of multiple different paddling training platforms as well, and Aloha Athletics being in that category. And like, I'll never forget, I think it was either my first or second year when I like just got into racing. I was either like 18 or 19. And there was like an announcement on Facebook about like our Canadian national championships. And I commented on the status being like, oh, like, where is it? I'm so excited. Like, I really want to come this year and I'm looking forward to it. And then kind of same thing like you, Lindsay, I had experienced a little bit of online bullying there, but I had someone comment back on my comment and say, "Oh, Maddie, this is our national championship. It's not just some feel-good beach race. Like, don't like put this on your calendar." Like, basically this person was saying, like, "You're not ready. Like, don't come. You're not good enough." And I remember that just lit a fire under my ass. Like, I'm like, I'm gonna go. Like, it motivated me than anything discouraged me. But it would have been so cool to have like a community or people to speak about that experience, just to say like, hey, this is what I'm going through and how do I maybe like overcome this, or how do I take on this challenge now in a new way. And having platforms like Aloha Athletics allows people to have those conversations, to talk about other races that they might want to do, maybe ask other paddlers as well, say, hey, what do you think? Like, should I do this race? Should I not do this race? Um, so it's just, yeah, it's really neat that you provide that. And that's your goal with it too, because we do learn alongside each other. And when you take the ego out of it, and it's not this hierarchy of like, I'm the coach and you're the paddler, it's just like, I don't know. I think the world's such a better place when we all come together and we can learn from each other. So it sounds like you're doing really good work, Lindsey. That's awesome.
Thanks, Maddie. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. My goodness. Man, Holly, there's so many things. I could just like, I could talk to you all day, Lindsey. Like, oh, you mentioned earlier about your book club. So maybe you can tell us a bit about that too. Is that with Aloha Athletics as well?
Yeah, so it's through Aloha Athletics. Earlier this year, I had started a virtual book club. And again, just on the community theme and growing and learning from each other, but also together. And it's a little bit selfish or self-serving is for the past several years, I had a goal to read a book a month, and I had failed that every single year. So I was like, if I start a book club, I'm going to force myself to read a book a month. And it'll just be way more enjoyable for me and purposeful to have a community to share that with. So every month I pick a book with help from our community as well. We've got a lot of great input, and there are geared towards athletes. So anyone can join the book club, but it's really those on an athletic pursuit. So last month, or for April, we read The Champions Mind, which is an amazing book. This has been my favorite book of the year so far. I highly recommend it to you guys, to anyone listening to this. It was really transformational for me in a lot of ways. Talks a lot about mindset and all that. And I feel like I'm pretty experienced in mindset. It's coaching that I offer as well through Aloha Athletics. But I took so many amazing little nuggets from this book that I've been applying in my life. So I highly, highly recommend that book. But yeah, essentially we pick a book every month and then we meet on Zoom, and I'll go through the takeaways from the book, the main points. We'll have discussion questions, have a community conversation, and then we close with action items, because I think it's so easy to listen to a podcast or read a book, and it's great entertainment for an hour or so if it's a podcast, or for like a few weeks if it's a book, and then it goes, in our brain and then out into outer space, right? Like it's gone. So we really focus on the action items and hold each other accountable to those action items. So every book club, I take notes what people's actions items are, and I'm following up with people like, hey, you said you were going to start a breathwork routine before your pre-race. You raced last weekend. Did you do that? Like, how did it go? So it's really just, again, growing together as a community and learning from each other and together. So yeah, it's open to everyone. If you go on to aloha-athletics.com/blog, you'll see every month we post the book we picked, why we think it's a good read, and how to join. And it's totally free. Again, open to everyone. You don't have to have read the book to join. We have people that come just time to listen to the book summary or to the action items. You could also listen to the book if reading is not your jam. It's totally inclusive, open to everyone, and just a really great way to connect within the community and learn and grow together.
I'll have to put that in the show notes, everyone who's listening.
Okay, I'm so thrilled you said that though, because literally I'm actually working with a mental performance coach. I've been working with her for about a year, and she recommended that book as well. She loves that book. So I've only read like the first chapter. Yeah. And I'm like, oh,
It's so
I
good.
gotta read it. I gotta finish it. But I'm reading
You
another
should.
book right now that Blake gave me.
What
So
are you
I'm like,
reading right now?
okay, I've got it right here. It's called
I have like a whiteboard in my office right here of like all different book recommendations. I'm just like slowly going through them. So I'm curious to see what you're reading.
Well, when you mentioned the YouTube documentary, I wrote that down because I'm like, I'm such a geek. Like I don't know why I love like running ultra marathons on YouTube. Like there's some cool documentaries, so I wrote that down. But yeah, I'm reading Inner Excellence. It's train your mind for extraordinary performance and the best possible life.
Maddie, that's the
So
first book I'm looking at my whiteboard right now that I have written down. Inner Excellence is, yeah, we haven't gotten to it yet, but it's on my list. So I'll have to put a little like asterisk next to it. Maddie recommends.
recommends. Oh, but a really fun question I think I have for you, Lindsey, though, on that note, is that if anybody, any paddlers or any athletes listening to this have any action items that they could take away from this conversation with you, what would you recommend those athletes do?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is to develop your mindset and to start to build confidence and off the water and to believe in yourself, to know that everything is possible. The 49th lap, a last paddler standing, while not done yet by a female, is possible. The last paddler standing, being a female, while not done yet, is possible. And I need to, taking a little bit of my own advice, I need to believe that it's possible for me and to start to roadmap that for myself. I think that's like the biggest advice I can give anyone, though, is to believe in yourself, set your goals high. Like I tell all of my friends, like for Riley, for example, for the crossing this year, her goal is to be the last female, or sorry, to be the first female with cystic fibrosis to go all 80 and to go iron. And I told her the other day, I'm like, Riley, that's great, but you're thinking too small. Why do you want to just finish? You could wind up on the podium, right? Like that race places 1 through 5. Why don't you set your sights on one of those spots? Dream bigger. I think so many times, whether it be from influence of others, what we see on social media or what our family or friends tell us, we limit ourselves. So I really try to encourage everyone to just dream bigger. I think you're really good at this with like following your pursuits and traveling all over, following your passion and your dream. But I think the average person is living a little bit too small, not just in athletics, but in all aspects of their lives. Who's to say what we're capable of? The only person that's in charge of what I'm capable of is me, right? It's not my husband. It's not my mom. It's not my coach, et cetera, et cetera. It's me. So I'm in charge of the dream. I am the author of the dream, not for anyone else to co-write, to, any of that. So I encourage people to just start to think bigger, incorporating journaling or meditation or any sort of mindset work into your training, I think is a good action item as well. A lot of times I'll recommend that to people and they think, I don't want to journal, or like, I don't want to meditate. I don't want to breathe. Like that's so woo woo. That's not going to work. But all that stuff is really scientifically rooted. There's a lot of great research out there on why it works. I think oftentimes when we meet something with hesitation, it's like you have to figure out what that's coming from. Like I first got into journaling. I used to hate journaling. I used to hate it so much, but it was assigned to me during my 200-hour yoga teacher training. We had to journal and we had a mentor that we had to, here's my journal, like it's done. And we had to actually share some of that. So it wasn't just checking the box, but I had met that with so much mental like resistance. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is silly. I get hand cramps when I write. I have sloppy handwriting. Like I was telling myself all of these stories that weren't real. So I think just starting to think about what are the stories that you're telling yourself, whether it be, you're holding yourself back or you're not dreaming big enough because some story that you've told yourself. Maybe you're not, you're holding yourself back by not incorporating this mindset work because of a story you told yourself or let others tell yourself. So yeah, those are the action items that I would say. So dream big, go inside yourself and start working on your mindset in some capacity.
That's really, really good advice. Really interesting. And I think a challenge for any of the listeners who have made it to this point of the podcast, we'd love it if you could contact any of us, any three of us, or the paddlogger, maybe Instagram account or something, and tell us what your actionable steps are after listening to this conversation, just like you do, Lindsey, with the book club. Really interested to hear if anyone is gonna has taken anything away from this, and what you might change in the future after listening to Lindsey's awesome advice.
I hope this conversation too inspires more female athletes as well to get into the paddling ultra endurance space. I hope this conversation inspires more people just in general to chase their dreams, to go big or to go home. Because I do. No, I'm just kidding. Don't go home. Go in the water and track your paddle with Paddlogger. But just think, like, honestly, after like listening to you, Lindsey, like, I want to go paddle 230 miles, you know? Like, I hope people really do feel inspired by listening to you. And I think in the intro, that's why I said, I think you're such a phenomenal human. You're such a phenomenal athlete. And thank you so much for sharing all of your awesome wisdom with us. Like, I know we really appreciate it.
Of course, I'm an open book. I'm always happy to chat with any athlete, especially chatting with other females. I think that's so great. Maddie, I know we had collaborated on a piece for advice for the next generation of female athletes for Women's in Sport Day earlier this year. So yeah, really, if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to shoot me a message. I'm so passionate about getting females on the water and answering those questions, giving the advice, maybe answering the questions you don't want to ask. Like, what question I had during Chatterjack when I was on my cycle was, what do I do? Because it's a 6-hour-ish race, you know? So those type of questions, really here to support women in getting into the sport. You know, all athletes, men too. We have men in our community, but I would say I definitely have a special space in my heart for supporting women getting into the sport.
Absolutely.
And where's the best place for them to find you, to send you a message?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at earthgirllindsey is my personal account. And then aloha.athletics is the business account that Casey and I run. So if you send us a message, we will both see it there. If you shoot me a personal message, just send it to my personal Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been so great to hear, all of your experiences and your advice. And yeah, I'm really excited to put some things into practice too. We've had a great time. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I feel like I could chat for hours with you guys. I'm like, oh, how long is it? I just looked at the watch. I'm like, oh, I've been here for a while. Like, just feel like we're just getting started. It was really easy to chat with.
No, it's been great.
Seriously, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, guys. See you all soon. And let's all get on the water.
Thank you so much for tuning in and for listening to this episode of the Rise and Glide podcast brought to you by Paddlogger.
We just have 2 small things to ask you before you close this episode. The first one, if you enjoyed it, please leave us a rating and a review. It really makes a big difference. And the second one is to go to the App Store and download Paddlogger today.
We can't wait to see you on the next episode.